I watched my sister Emma's face drain of color as she realized who was sitting behind the mahogany desk. The same desk where, just 5 minutes ago, she'd been bragging to the receptionist about her perfect academic record and how she was obviously the best candidate for this position. "Hello, Emma," I said, setting down her resume, the one filled with my achievements listed under her name. "Please, have a seat." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confident posture she'd walked in with crumbled as she stumbled into the leather chair across from me. Behind her, I could see my assistant Marcus trying to hide a smirk. He knew exactly who Emma was and what she'd done to me. "Sarah, but how are you?" Emma's voice came out as a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, savoring this moment I'd been planning for 3 years. How am I the CEO of Henderson Tech? That's an interesting story, but first, let's talk about why you're here. I picked up her resume again, making a show of reading it. It says here you graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a degree in computer engineering. Perfect GPA. Dean's List every semester. Impressive. The color that had returned to her cheeks vanished again. We both knew those weren't her achievements. "There seems to be some confusion," she started, but I held up my hand. "Oh, there's no confusion at all. See, I have an excellent memory. Photographic, you might say. I remember everything about our childhood, our teenage years, and especially our college experience." I paused, watching her fidget. "I remember it all, Emma, every single detail." The truth was, I remembered more than just this lifetime. 3 years ago, I died in a car accident on the way to a job interview, an interview for the very company I now owned. But instead of staying dead, I'd woken up on the morning of my 18th birthday, 7 years in the past, with all my memories intact, a second chance, a chance to do things differently, a chance to stop being Emma's victim. I'd spent my first life being the perfect daughter, the brilliant student, the one who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. While Emma skated by on charm and manipulation, I'd buried myself in books, in code, in building the skills that would eventually make me indispensable. But it hadn't mattered. Emma had always found a way to steal my thunder, to take credit for my work, to convince our parents that her mediocre efforts were somehow more valuable than my excellence. The worst part had been college. I'd worked 3 jobs to pay my way through MIT, while Emma got a full ride courtesy of our parents' investment in her future. I'd tutored her through every class, written half her papers, and even completed her senior project while she partied. But when graduation came, when the job offers started rolling in, Emma had done something unforgivable. She'd stolen my identity. Not legally, she wasn't that stupid. But she'd taken copies of my transcripts, my portfolio, my recommendation letters, and submitted them as her own to the top tech companies. When they called for interviews, she'd claimed there had been a mix-up with the names, that Sarah was her nickname, her real name was Emma. Our parents had backed her up, saying they'd always called her Sarah at home. I'd found out when Google called me for a follow-up interview and mentioned how impressed they'd been with Emma's portfolio. By then, she'd already accepted 3 job offers and was choosing between them. When I tried to prove the work was mine, she'd cried to our parents about my jealousy and delusions. They'd believed her, of course, they always did. I'd died 6 months later, broke, blacklisted, and broken. The tech world was smaller than people thought, and word had gotten around that there were questions about my qualifications. No one wanted to hire someone with authenticity issues. But death had given me something invaluable: perspective, knowledge, and most importantly, time. When I'd woken up on my 18th birthday, 7 years in the past, I'd known exactly what I needed to do. This time, I wouldn't be reactive. I wouldn't be the victim. I'd be the architect of my own destiny and Emma's downfall. I'd started by documenting everything. Every homework assignment I helped her with, every project I completed for her, every lie she told our parents. I'd installed keyloggers on the family computer and recorded every conversation. I'd built an airtight case against her, but more importantly, I'd started building my own empire. Instead of going to college immediately, I'd deferred for a year and used my programming knowledge to create 3 different apps. All of them had gone viral. By the time I was 19, I'd sold my first company for $8 million. By 21, I'd sold my second for $40 million. By 23, I'd used that money to acquire Henderson Tech, a struggling mid-sized firm that I knew, thanks to my future knowledge, was sitting on several patents that would be worth billions. Emma, meanwhile, had followed the same path as before. She'd gone to MIT, struggled through her classes, and eventually graduated with a barely passing GPA. This time, though, I hadn't been there to help her. I'd been too busy building my business empire. She'd applied to hundreds of jobs after graduation. None of them had called back. Her GPA was too low, her portfolio was too weak, and her interview skills were non-existent without my work to back them up. She'd been unemployed for 2 years living with our parents, who were growing increasingly frustrated with their investment that had yielded no returns. Which brought us to today. You know, I continued, still holding her resume, when I bought this company, I made a promise to myself that I would only hire the best of the best. People with integrity. People who earned their achievements through hard work and talent. I looked directly into her eyes. Tell me, Emma, do you think you fit that description? She was sweating now, despite the air conditioning. Sarah, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm very curious to hear how you're going to explain this. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a website I'd built years ago, a comprehensive archive of every piece of work Emma had ever submitted in college, alongside the original versions I'd written for her. Timestamps, metadata, even photos of my handwritten drafts. Everything. Emma's face went ashen. Where did you get these? I've had them all along. See, unlike you, I actually did the work. I kept copies of everything. Every algorithm, every code snippet, every research paper. All of it has my fingerprints on it, literally and figuratively. I clicked through several examples. Look at this pattern analysis project. You submitted it for your advanced algorithms class and got an A+. But here's the interesting thing. I wrote it 6 months earlier for my own portfolio. I can even show you the version history in my GitHub repository. I pulled up another window. And this machine learning model that you designed for your senior capstone? I have 17 different versions of it, showing my entire thought process and development cycle. You turned in version 12. Want to guess why you didn't submit the final version? Emma's voice was barely audible. Because I didn't understand the improvements you made. Exactly. I closed the laptop. You see, Emma, the thing about stealing someone's work is that you never really understand it. You can copy it, submit it, even get good grades on it. But you can't innovate on it. You can't defend it under pressure. And you certainly can't build a career on it. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Henderson Tech occupied 3 floors of this building now, but I had plans to expand. Big plans. Do you want to know how I built all this? I asked, not turning around. It started with the first app I created when I was 18. A simple productivity tool that I coded in my bedroom while you were out partying. I sold that app for $8 million. The buyer? Google. They were so impressed with the elegance of the code that they offered me a consulting contract. That led to 3 more apps, 2 of which I sold to Apple and Microsoft. I turned back to face her. By the time I was 21, I had enough money to start making serious investments. I bought a small AI startup that I knew, through careful market research, was about to develop breakthrough technology. Sold it 18 months later for $40 million. Then I acquired Henderson Tech, which was hemorrhaging money, but owned patents that I recognized as foundational to the next generation of quantum computing. Emma was staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. But how did you know all that? How did you know which companies to invest in? I smiled. That was the one secret I'd never tell her. Hard work, Emma, research, due diligence, all the things you never learned how to do because you always had me to do them for you. I walked back to my desk and pressed the intercom button. Marcus, could you come in, please? Marcus entered immediately, carrying a thick folder. He was 35, brilliant, and had been my right-hand man since I'd acquired the company. More importantly, he was fiercely loyal and had a particular hatred for people who took credit for others' work. His previous boss had tried to steal one of his patents, which was how I'd managed to recruit him. Emma, I said, I'd like you to meet Marcus Chen, my chief technology officer. Marcus, this is my sister Emma. She's applied for the junior developer position. Marcus looked at Emma with barely concealed disgust. The one with the interesting resume? That's the one. I took the folder from Marcus. Marcus has been reviewing applications all week. We've had over 300 candidates for this entry-level position. The competition is fierce. I opened the folder and spread several resumes across my desk. These are our top 10 candidates. Harvard graduate with 3 published papers, Stanford PhD with 2 years at SpaceX, MIT graduate who built her own quantum computing prototype in her dorm room. I looked up at Emma, and then there's you. Emma's voice was shaking. Sarah, please, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I cut her off. Emma, fraud isn't a mistake, it's a felony. What you did to me in college wasn't an error in judgment, it was theft. You stole 3 years of my life, my reputation, and my future. The only reason you're not in jail right now is because I chose not to press charges. Yet, Marcus added helpfully. I shot him a grateful look. Yet! That's right, I haven't pressed charges yet. Emma's composure finally cracked completely. Tears started streaming down her face. Please, Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know what I did was wrong, but I was young and stupid and scared. Mom and Dad had such high expectations, and I couldn't live up to them. I panicked. So you destroyed my life instead. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought it would just be temporary. I thought I could figure it out later. I sat back down, studying her tear-stained face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered what my life had been like before my rebirth. The isolation, the financial struggle, the crushing weight of being labeled a fraud in the only industry I'd ever cared about. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and steady. You're going to answer some questions for me, honestly. And depending on your answers, I'll decide whether to hire you, have you arrested, or simply let you walk out of here and never darken my door again. Emma nodded frantically. Anything. I'll do anything. First question. Do Mom and Dad know you're here? Yes, they drove me here. They're waiting in the parking garage. I raised an eyebrow. They drove you here? How generous of them. I assume they still think you're the brilliant daughter and I'm the jealous failure? Emma's silence was answer enough. Second question. Have you told them the truth about college? About what you did to me? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. Third question. Are you still living with them? Yes. And they're supporting you financially? Yes. How long has it been since you graduated? 2 years. I nodded slowly. 2 years of unemployment. That must be frustrating for them. All that money they invested in your education and nothing to show for it. Emma flinched. They're getting impatient. I bet they are. I leaned forward. Final question. What would you be willing to do to get this job? Anything, she said immediately. I'll work for free. I'll work overtime. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Anything? Yes. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then here's my offer. I'll give you a job, Emma. Not the junior developer position. You're nowhere near qualified for that. But I have an opening for a janitorial position. Minimum wage, no benefits, night shift. You'll be cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash cans, and mopping floors. Emma's mouth fell open. You want me to be a janitor. I want you to understand what real work feels like. Every night, you'll clean the offices of people who actually earned their positions. You'll empty the trash of programmers who wrote their own code, who built their own projects, who achieved their success through merit rather than theft. I stood up again. But here's the best part, Emma. Every single person in this building will know exactly who you are and what you did. I'm going to make sure of that. They'll know that you're the CEO's sister who tried to steal her identity. They'll know that you're working as a janitor because it's the only job you're qualified for. Sarah, you can't what? Can't offer you an honest job? Can't treat you the same way you treated me? My voice grew harder. You wanted to know how I built all this? It started with accepting that I'd been knocked down and deciding to get back up. You've been knocked down, Emma. The question is, are you willing to work your way back up? Or are you going to keep looking for shortcuts? Emma was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. This is humiliating. Yes, it is. Just like it was humiliating when I had to explain to potential employers that my own work wasn't actually mine. Just like it was humiliating when I had to watch you accept job offers based on my achievements. Just like it was humiliating when our parents accused me of being jealous and delusional. I walked around the desk and stood in front of her chair. But here's the difference, Emma. This humiliation is earned. It's the natural consequence of your choices. And unlike what you did to me, it comes with an opportunity for redemption. What do you mean? Work here for 1 year. Show me that you can be reliable, honest, and hardworking. Prove that you understand the value of earning something through your own effort. And at the end of that year, I'll consider transferring you to our entry-level programming training program. Emma looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. You'd really give me another chance? I'd give you the chance you never gave me, the chance to earn your way up from the bottom. I returned to my seat. But understand this, you'll be starting at the very bottom. You'll be working harder than you've ever worked in your life. And if you mess up even once, if you lie even once, if you try to take credit for anyone else's work even once, you're gone. No second chances, no family meetings, no explanations. Gone. Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand. And if I say no, then you walk out of here and I make some phone calls. Every tech company in the city will know about your academic fraud within the week. I have documentation going back 7 years, Emma, metadata, timestamps, witness statements. Even if you somehow managed to get hired somewhere, they'd fire you the moment they ran a background check. I let that sink in for a moment. But if you take the janitor job, if you complete your year successfully, I'll make sure that history stays buried. You'll have a clean slate and a genuine skill set to build on. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Finally, she looked up at me. Why are you doing this? Why not just destroy me completely? You could? It was a fair question. The truth was, I'd spent the first year after my rebirth planning her complete destruction. I'd fantasized about exposing her fraud publicly, about watching her face charges, about seeing her lose everything the way I had. But as my success grew, as my company flourished, I'd realized something important. The best revenge wasn't destroying Emma. It was succeeding so completely that her betrayal became irrelevant. Because, I said finally, I'm not you. I don't get satisfaction from other people's suffering. I get satisfaction from achievement, from building something meaningful, from creating value in the world. Destroying you wouldn't add anything to my life. But giving you the chance to become someone better, that might actually mean something. I pressed the intercom again. Marcus, could you send in Janet from HR? Within minutes, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor entered the office. Janet Rodriguez had been with Henderson Tech for 15 years and had seen the company through its worst times and its recent revival. Janet, I said, I'd like you to meet Emma Hamilton. She's interested in our nighttime janitorial position. Could you walk her through the employment process? Janet looked between Emma and me, clearly picking up on the tension in the room. Of course, the position starts at $15 an hour, Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Is that acceptable? Emma nodded miserably. Excellent. You'll need to complete a background check and drug screening. We can schedule that for tomorrow if you'd like to get started next week. That would be fine, Emma whispered. Janet handed her a packet of forms. Fill these out and return them to me by end of business tomorrow. Welcome to Henderson Tech. After Janet left, I walked Emma to the door. Oh, and Emma, one more thing. I'll be calling Mom and Dad tonight to let them know about your new position. I think they deserve to know that their investment finally paid off. Emma's face went white again. Sarah, please don't. Don't what? Don't tell them their daughter got a job? I'm sure they'll be thrilled. I opened the door. Congratulations, Emma. You're officially employed. As she walked out, shoulders slumped and clutching her paperwork, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined my family reunion going when I was younger. But then again, a lot of things weren't how I'd imagined them. Marcus appeared at my elbow. That was either the most generous thing I've ever seen or the most ruthless. Why can't it be both? He chuckled. Fair point. Think she'll actually show up Monday night? I watched Emma disappear into the elevator, probably heading down to the parking garage where our parents were waiting. Oh, she'll show up. She doesn't have any other choice. And if she doesn't last the year, then at least I'll know I tried. I headed back into my office. Either way, it'll be interesting to watch. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for the first time in 3 years. It was a modest 2-story colonial in the suburbs, the same house I'd grown up in, the same house where Emma was now living at 25 with no job and no prospects. I pulled into the driveway in my Tesla Model S, a small indulgence that I'd bought more for the symbolism than the luxury. The same driveway where I used to park my beat-up Honda Civic, back when I was the disappointing daughter who couldn't seem to get her life together. Mom answered the door, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I hadn't seen her since the funeral, my funeral technically, though she didn't know that. To her, I was the daughter who'd disappeared 3 years ago after making wild accusations about Emma. Sarah? She looked me up and down, taking in my tailored suit, my confident posture, the expensive car in the driveway. What are you doing here? Hi, Mom. I thought we should talk. She stood aside reluctantly, and I walked into the living room where Dad was watching television. He looked up as I entered, and I saw the same mixture of confusion and wariness in his eyes. Hello, Dad. Sarah. His voice was neutral, guarded. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. I sat down in the armchair across from them, the same chair I'd sat in as a teenager when they'd lectured me about grades, about goals, about living up to my potential. I heard Emma had a job interview today. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Yes, Mom said slowly, at some tech company downtown. She was very nervous about it. Henderson Tech, I supplied helpfully. That's right. Do you know it? I smiled. You could say that. I own it. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad reached for the remote and muted the television. Mom sank onto the couch next to him, her face pale. You what? Dad's voice came out as a croak. I own Henderson Tech. I bought it 3 years ago. I've been the CEO for the past 2 years. I crossed my legs, settling in for what I knew would be a long conversation. Emma came in today to interview for a junior developer position. It was enlightening. But that's impossible, Mom said. You disappeared. You had no money, no job prospects, no references. No references because Emma stole them, I said calmly. But you're right, I did disappear. I left town with $800 in my bank account and a duffel bag full of clothes. Would you like to know what I did next? They stared at me, speechless. I rebuilt my life from scratch. I used my actual skills, the ones Emma had been borrowing, to create something meaningful. I started with freelance programming jobs, sleeping in my car and coding in coffee shops. Within 6 months, I'd saved enough to rent a studio apartment. Within a year, I'd created my first successful app. I pulled out my phone and showed them a Forbes article from the previous year. The headline read, Under 30 Success Story, How Sarah Hamilton Built a Tech Empire from Nothing. That's you? Mom whispered, looking at the photo of me standing in front of my company's logo. That's me, the daughter you wrote off as delusional and jealous, the daughter you accused of lying about her own achievements. I put the phone away. The daughter you chose not to believe. Dad found his voice. Sarah, if this is true, if Emma really did what you said she did, she did, and I can prove it. I opened my laptop, a different one from the office, but with the same comprehensive evidence archive. Every piece of work she ever submitted, every project she claimed as her own, every recommendation letter she falsified. It's all here. For the next hour, I walked them through the evidence, code repositories with timestamps, email chains showing me sending work to Emma before her submission deadlines, photos of handwritten notes in my writing that matched her submitted assignments, bank records showing payments I'd made for software and resources that appeared in her projects. By the end, Mom was crying and Dad was staring at the wall with a look of absolute devastation. How long? Dad asked finally. How long was she stealing from you? All through high school and then throughout college. 4 years of undergraduate work, mostly mine. I estimate I did about 60% of the coursework for her degree. And we paid for her education, Mom said, her voice hollow. $50,000 a year for 4 years. While I worked 3 jobs and took out student loans for my own education, I added. The same education that I was actually completing for both of us. Dad put his head in his hands. Jesus Christ, what have we done? You believed the daughter who told you what you wanted to hear instead of the daughter who told you the truth. I closed the laptop. It's not uncommon. Emma was always more charming, more likable. I was the serious one, the intense one. When she painted me as jealous and vindictive, it probably fit your existing perception of our dynamic. But we should have investigated, Mom said. We should have looked into your claims instead of just dismissing them. Yes, you should have, but what's done is done. The question now is what happens next. What do you mean? Dad asked. I offered Emma a job today, janitorial work, night shift, minimum wage. She accepted. Mom's mouth fell open. You offered your sister a job as a janitor? I offered my sister the only job she's qualified for. She has no real programming skills, no genuine work experience, and a 2-year gap in her employment history. But she needs to work, and I need someone to clean the offices. It's a fair exchange. That's humiliating, Dad said. Yes, it is. Just like it was humiliating when she stole my identity and ruined my reputation. Just like it was humiliating when you both accused me of making it all up. I leaned forward. But here's the difference. I'm giving her a path forward. Work for 1 year, prove she can be honest and reliable, and I'll consider training her for a real programming position. It's more than she deserves and more than she gave me. The room fell silent again. Finally, Mom spoke up. What do you want from us, Sarah? An apology? Money? What would make this right? Nothing can make it right, Mom. The damage is done. But if you want to start rebuilding our relationship, you can start by acknowledging the truth. Emma is a fraud. She stole from me, lied to you, and wasted your money on a degree she didn't earn. I am successful despite what she did to me, not because of any help from this family. I stood up to leave. And if you really want to make amends, you'll support my decision about Emma's employment. No pressure, no guilt trips, no attempts to negotiate a better deal for her. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences. Where are you going? Dad asked as I headed for the door. Home, to my penthouse apartment downtown. The one I bought with money I actually earned. I paused at the threshold. Oh, and just so we're clear, Emma starts work Monday night. If she doesn't show up, if she quits, or if you try to interfere with her employment in any way, I'll release the fraud documentation to every tech company in the country. She'll never work in this field again. Sarah, wait, Mom called after me. Will we see you again? I considered the question. These people had failed me in the most fundamental way possible. They'd chosen to believe a lie rather than investigate the truth. They'd abandoned their own daughter when she needed them most. But they were still my parents, and despite everything, part of me still loved them. Maybe, I said finally. But if you want a relationship with me, it has to be built on truth this time. No more lies, no more favoritism, no more believing what's convenient instead of what's real. I left them sitting in their living room, surrounded by the evidence of their failures as parents, and Emma's failures as a human being. It should have felt triumphant, but mostly it just felt sad. Monday night came and I stayed late at the office to see if Emma would actually show up. At 9:45 p.m., I watched from my office window as a familiar figure emerged from the parking garage elevator, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and carrying what looked like a brown bag lunch. She was 15 minutes early. I smiled to myself and went back to work. 3 months later, Emma was still showing up every night. The night security guard, Robert, told me she was quiet, thorough, and never complained about the work. She emptied every trash can, cleaned every bathroom, and mopped every floor. She even stayed late on Fridays to do the deeper cleaning tasks that weren't part of her regular duties. I'd seen her a few times in passing. She always ducked her head and mumbled a greeting, clearly still mortified by the situation. But she was there, and she was working, and for the first time in her life, she was earning something honestly. The real test came in month 4, when one of our junior developers accidentally left his laptop open in the break room with a partially completed project on the screen. It was exactly the kind of opportunity that the old Emma would have exploited. A chance to photograph someone else's work and claim credit for it later. But according to Robert, she'd simply moved the laptop to a secure location and reported it to security. She hadn't even looked at the screen. Progress. By month 6, something interesting had started happening. Emma had begun asking questions, not about the work itself, which she wasn't qualified to understand, but about the company, about the industry, about what it took to succeed in tech. She'd started reading programming books during her breaks. She'd even signed up for online coding tutorials and was working through them on her own time. It was Marcus who brought it to my attention. "Your sister asked me about our entry-level training program yesterday," he said during our weekly meeting. "She wanted to know what prerequisites someone would need to qualify. What did you tell her?" "The truth. 6 months of consistent performance in her current role, completion of our basic programming assessment, and a recommendation from her supervisor." He paused. "She's actually doing better than I expected." "Better how?" "She shows up early, stays late when needed, and hasn't complained once about the work. The cleaning crew supervisor says she's the most reliable person on his team." Marcus looked at me curiously. "Think she's genuine or just playing the long game?" It was a fair question. The old Emma had been manipulative and calculating, but the woman who'd been cleaning our offices for 6 months seemed different. Humbled, maybe. Or perhaps just finally understanding what real work felt like. "I guess we'll find out," I said. At the 8-month mark, Emma submitted her formal application for the programming training program. Her essay was short but honest. "For most of my life, I took shortcuts and let other people do the hard work for me. I thought I was smart enough to get by on charm and manipulation. I was wrong. Working as a janitor has taught me more about the value of honest work than 4 years of college ever did. I know I don't deserve another chance, but if you'll give me one, I promise to earn it the right way this time." She passed the basic programming assessment, barely, but she passed. And when I asked our night supervisor for his recommendation, he didn't hesitate. "Best employee I've had in 10 years," he said. "Never misses a shift, never cuts corners, always willing to help out her coworkers. If she wants to move up, she's earned the chance." So at the 9-month mark, I called Emma into my office for the second time. She looked different than she had during her interview. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a company t-shirt. She was thinner, more muscular from the physical work. But the biggest change was in her eyes. The entitled arrogance had been replaced by something that looked almost like wisdom. "Sit down, Emma." She took the same chair she'd sat in 9 months earlier, but her posture was different. Straighter, more confident, but in a quiet way. "You wanted to see me?" "I've been reviewing your application for the training program," I said. "Your supervisor speaks very highly of you." "Robert's a good man. He taught me a lot about what it means to take pride in your work." I nodded. "Your programming assessment scores were acceptable, but not outstanding. You'll be starting at the very bottom of the training program, and it will be significantly harder than your current job." "I understand." "The other trainees will all be recent college graduates with computer science degrees. You'll be older than most of them, and your academic background will be questionable. They'll probably look down on you." "I can handle that." I studied her face, looking for signs of the old Emma, the entitlement, the expectation that she deserved special treatment. I didn't see it. "Why do you want this, Emma? Really? Not the answer you think I want to hear, but the truth?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. "Because for the first time in my life, I want to accomplish something that's actually mine. I want to write code that comes from my own brain, solve problems with my own skills, build something that I can be proud of." She paused. "And because I want to prove to you and to myself that I can be better than I was." It was a good answer. Maybe even an honest one. "All right," I said. "You start the training program next Monday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. You'll continue working nights for the first 2 weeks to ensure you can handle both responsibilities. If your performance drops in either role, you're out." Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. "Thank you, Sarah. I won't let you down." See that you don't. I handed her a packet of materials. These are the prerequisites for the program. I suggest you spend the weekend studying. As she reached the door, she turned back. Sarah, can I ask you something? What? Do you think there's any chance we could be sisters again? Real sisters, I mean. Not the fake relationship we had before, but something genuine? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. The woman standing in my doorway wasn't the selfish, manipulative girl who'd stolen my future. She was someone who'd been broken down and was trying to build herself back up. Someone who was finally taking responsibility for her mistakes. Ask me again in a year, I said finally, after you've completed the program. After you've proven that this change is real and permanent. Then we'll see. She nodded, understanding the terms. Fair enough. 1 year later, Emma graduated from the training program in the middle of her class. Not the top, but not the bottom either. She'd earned every point through her own effort, stayed late to work on projects she didn't understand, and asked for help when she needed it. Most importantly, she'd never once tried to take credit for anyone else's work. I promoted her to junior developer, the same position she'd originally applied for 2 years earlier. But this time, she'd actually earned it. The promotion ceremony was small, just Emma, myself, Marcus, and a few other department heads in the main conference room. As I handed her the official offer letter, I saw tears in her eyes. Congratulations, I said simply. You've earned this. Thank you, she whispered, clutching the letter like it was made of gold. I know it's just an entry-level position, but it feels like everything to me. And I believed her. The woman standing in front of me bore almost no resemblance to the entitled, manipulative person who'd walked into my office 2 years ago begging for a job. This Emma had calluses on her hands from months of manual labor. She had genuine programming skills that she'd developed through her own study and practice. Most importantly, she had humility, something the old Emma had never possessed. After the ceremony, Marcus pulled me aside. You know, when you first told me your plan for her, I thought you were being either too soft or too cruel. I couldn't decide which. And now? Now I think you're a better person than I am. What you did, giving her the chance to rebuild herself from the ground up, that took more strength than just destroying her would have. I shrugged. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. The question is whether they're willing to do the work to earn it. Speaking of which, Marcus said with a grin, I have some news that might interest you. Remember that quantum computing project we've been developing? The one based on the Henderson patents? Of course. Well, Google just made us an offer. They want to license the technology for their quantum research division. He paused dramatically. The offer is for $200 million. I felt my knees go weak. $200 million. Even after taxes and reinvestment, that would put Henderson Tech in the top tier of technology companies. It would validate every decision I'd made, every risk I'd taken, every sleepless night I'd spent building this empire. Are you serious? Dead serious. The contracts are being drawn up as we speak. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. Congratulations, boss. You're about to become one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country. That evening, I called my parents for the first time since our confrontation 2 years earlier. The conversation was awkward at first. We were all still learning how to relate to each other now that the truth was out in the open. But gradually, we'd been rebuilding our relationship, one careful conversation at a time. Sarah! Mom's voice was warm with surprise. This is unexpected. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Mom. Better than fine, actually. I have some news. Good news, I hope. Very good news. Henderson Tech just closed a major licensing deal, $200 million. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Dad's voice came through. He must have picked up the extension. Did you say $200 million? I did. It's the biggest deal in the company's history. We're going to be expanding into 3 new buildings, hiring 200 new employees, and launching a major research initiative. Oh my God, Mom breathed. Sarah, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. The words hit me harder than I'd expected. I'd spent years telling myself that I didn't need their approval, that their opinion didn't matter. But hearing my mother say she was proud of me for something I'd actually accomplished Felt like a weight lifting off my chest. There's something else, I said. Emma just completed our developer training program. I'm promoting her to junior developer. Another pause. How is she doing? Dad asked carefully. We'd all learned to tread lightly when it came to Emma. She's doing well, really well. The work has been good for her. She's different. Better. We've noticed, Mom said quietly. She's been different at home too. More responsible, more thoughtful. She actually helps with household expenses now. I smiled. That was another change I'd implemented. Once Emma started earning a paycheck, I'd suggested she contribute to the household rather than living off our parents indefinitely. To my surprise, she'd agreed without argument. I think she's finally learning what it means to earn something honestly, I said. Sarah? Dad's voice was hesitant. Is there any chance you might join us for dinner this weekend? All of us together? It's been so long since we've been a family. I considered the question. 3 years ago, the idea of sitting around a dinner table with these people would have filled me with rage. They'd failed me when I needed them most, chosen lies over truth, convenience over justice. But time and success had given me perspective. They'd made mistakes, terrible, hurtful mistakes, but they were trying to do better now. I think I'd like that, I said finally. Really? Really, but I have one condition. What's that? No more pretending the past didn't happen. No more walking on eggshells around Emma's fraud or your role in covering it up. If we're going to be a family, it has to be built on honesty this time. Of course, Mom said quickly. We understand. Good. Then I'll see you Saturday at 6. Saturday's dinner was awkward but hopeful. Emma seemed nervous, clearly still adjusting to the reality that I was both her sister and her boss. Our parents were overly careful with their words, still afraid of saying the wrong thing and damaging our fragile reconciliation. But gradually, as the evening wore on, we began to relax. Emma told us about her training program, about the projects she was working on, about the colleagues who'd become her friends. She spoke with genuine enthusiasm about her work, not the fake passion she'd once affected, but real excitement about solving problems and building things. For my part, I found myself sharing more about my business than I'd intended. The challenges of running a company, the satisfaction of seeing ideas come to fruition, the weight of responsibility for hundreds of employees. It felt good to talk about my work with people who knew me before I became successful. You know, Dad said as we were clearing the dishes, I keep thinking about something you said a few years ago, about how success is more satisfying when you earn it yourself. What about it? I think I understand now why you didn't just give Emma a management position or pull strings to get her hired somewhere else. Making her start at the bottom, making her prove herself, it was the kindest thing you could have done for her. I glanced at Emma, who was loading plates into the dishwasher with the same methodical attention to detail she'd brought to cleaning offices. She had to learn the value of work, not just the money, but the satisfaction of accomplishing something through your own effort. You can't appreciate success if you never experience failure. I failed, Emma said quietly, not turning around from the sink. Spectacularly. But I'm grateful for it now. I needed to hit rock bottom before I could start building something real. It was the most insightful thing I'd ever heard her say. 2 months later, I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Marcus knocked on my door. Come in. He entered with a troubled expression. We have a situation. What kind of situation? It's about Emma. One of the other junior developers came to me with a complaint. My heart sank. After everything, after all the progress she'd made, had Emma reverted to her old habits? What happened? Jake Morrison claims Emma stole code from his project and submitted it as part of her own work. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Are you sure? I haven't investigated yet. I wanted to talk to you first, given the complexity of the situation. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of disappointment settle over me. I genuinely believed Emma had changed. I'd seen the evidence of her growth, her dedication, her honest effort. Had it all been an elaborate performance? Bring them both to conference room A, I said finally, and bring the code samples. I want to review everything myself. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Emma and Jake Morrison, a cocky 22-year-old fresh out of Stanford. Between us on the table were printouts of code, Jake's original work and Emma's submission. Jake, I said, walk me through your complaint. Jake leaned forward eagerly. It's obvious what happened. Look at lines 47 through 63 in both samples. The logic structure is identical. The variable names are the same. Even the comments are almost word for word identical. I studied the code samples. He was right. The similarities were unmistakable. But something felt off about his accusation. Emma, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Do you have an explanation for this? Emma's face was pale, but her voice was steady. Yes, I do. Jake and I were assigned to work on different modules of the same project. My module needed to interface with his, so I asked him to share his API documentation. He sent me his actual code instead of just the documentation. That's not what happened, Jake interrupted. She stole... I held up a hand to silence him. Let Emma finish. When I saw his code, I realized there was a more efficient way to handle the data processing. I wrote my own implementation and shared it with Jake, suggesting he might want to update his approach. He said he'd consider it, but apparently he decided to use my optimization and then claim I stole from him. Jake's face flushed red. That's a lie. She copied my work. Actually, I said slowly, studying the timestamps on the files. Emma's version was submitted 6 hours before yours, Jake. The room went quiet. Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Emma, I continued, do you have the email chain where you shared your optimization with Jake? She nodded and pulled out her phone. Within seconds, she'd forwarded me a thread showing exactly what she'd described, her sending an improved algorithm to Jake with a note suggesting he might find it useful. I looked at Jake, whose face had gone from red to white. It appears you're the one who used someone else's work without attribution, Mr. Morrison. That's not... Jake stammered. She's lying. She's just trying to cover up what she did. The timestamps don't lie, Jake. Neither do the email records. I stood up. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. After Jake had been removed from the building, Emma and I sat alone in the conference room. Why didn't you tell Marcus about the email chain when Jake first made his complaint? I asked. Emma shrugged. I figured the truth would come out during the investigation. I wasn't worried about false accusations. I learned a long time ago that honest work speaks for itself. I smiled. That it does. Sarah, Emma's voice was hesitant. Can I ask you something? Of course. When Jake first accused me, did you believe him? It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer. For about 30 seconds, yes. My first instinct was to assume you'd reverted to your old patterns. But then I looked at the evidence, and the evidence told a different story. Emma nodded slowly. I don't blame you for that. I spent years proving I couldn't be trusted. It's going to take time to rebuild that credibility. You're doing fine, I said. Better than fine. You handled this situation with more maturity than most people twice your age would have shown. 6 months later, Emma received her first performance review as a junior developer. Her scores were solid across the board, not outstanding, but consistently good. More importantly, her peer reviews were excellent. Her colleagues described her as helpful, reliable, and humble. I have a recommendation, Marcus told me during our weekly meeting. Emma's ready for more responsibility. I'd like to assign her to the quantum computing project. I raised an eyebrow. That's our most important initiative. Are you sure she's ready? She's been consistently exceeding expectations, and she has a particular talent for optimization algorithms. Plus, she works well with Dr. Chen's research team. Marcus paused. I think she's earned the opportunity. All right, but this is a significant step up. If she can't handle the increased responsibility, she can handle it, Marcus said confidently. Trust me on this one. He was right. Emma thrived on the quantum computing project, contributing several small but meaningful optimizations that improved the system's performance. She worked long hours without complaint, collaborated effectively with the research team, and never once tried to claim credit for work that wasn't hers. One evening, I found her still at her desk at 8 p.m., deep in concentration as she worked through a particularly complex algorithm. Burning the midnight oil? I asked. She looked up, startled. Oh, Sarah, I didn't hear you come in. What are you working on? Dr. Chen's error correction protocol. I think I've found a way to reduce the computational overhead by about 15%, but I want to test it thoroughly before I suggest any changes. I looked at her work, pages of handwritten calculations, multiple iterations of the same algorithm, careful testing protocols. It was the kind of meticulous, thoughtful approach that led to real breakthroughs. This is impressive work, Emma. She shrugged. It's just optimization. Dr. Chen did all the heavy lifting on the theoretical framework. Don't minimize your contribution. Optimization is what turns theoretical concepts into practical applications. I sat down in the chair across from her desk. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? Really happy, I mean. Not just satisfied with your progress, but genuinely fulfilled by what you're doing? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering the question. You know, I used to think happiness came from other people recognizing how smart I was, from getting praise and attention and admiration. But that was all based on lies, so it never felt real. She gestured at her computer screen, filled with lines of code she'd written herself. This is different. When I solve a problem, when I optimize an algorithm, when I contribute something meaningful to a project, that satisfaction comes from inside. It's not dependent on what other people think of me. And, and yes, I'm happy, really happy. Maybe for the first time in my life. It was the answer I'd been hoping to hear. 2 years later, Emma was promoted to senior developer. She'd earned the promotion through consistent excellence, innovative thinking, and genuine collaboration with her colleagues. The quantum computing project had been successfully launched, with several of her optimizations playing a crucial role in its performance. The promotion ceremony was held in the same conference room where I'd first offered her a janitorial position 4 years earlier. This time, though, the room was packed with colleagues, department heads, and even a few members of our board of directors. Emma Hamilton, I announced to the assembled crowd, has consistently demonstrated the qualities we value most at Henderson Tech: technical excellence, collaborative spirit, and unwavering integrity. It's my pleasure to promote her to senior developer and project lead for our new AI research initiative. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. Emma had earned the respect of her colleagues through her work, not through manipulation or political maneuvering. As I handed her the promotion letter, I saw tears in her eyes. But this time, they were tears of pride, not shame. After the ceremony, Emma approached me privately. Sarah, I have something to say. What's that? Thank you for everything. For giving me a chance when I didn't deserve one. For making me earn my way back up. For believing I could change when I didn't even believe it myself. You did the work, Emma. All I did was provide the opportunity. You did more than that. You saved my life. If you hadn't offered me that janitorial job, if you'd just destroyed me the way I deserved, I would have spent the rest of my life as a failure and a fraud. You gave me the chance to become someone I can actually be proud of. And what do you think of that person? Emma smiled. The first completely unguarded, genuinely happy smile I'd seen from her since we were children. I like her. She's not perfect, but she's honest. She works hard, she helps others, and she earns what she gets. She's someone I can respect. Good, I said, because that person is who you really are. It just took some time and effort to find her. 5 years after Emma's first interview, Henderson Tech had grown into one of the most successful technology companies in the country. Our quantum computing division had revolutionized data processing for major corporations. Our AI research had led to breakthroughs in medical diagnostics and climate modeling. We employed over 1,000 people across 4 office buildings. And Emma was now the head of our optimization department, leading a team of 12 developers in finding ways to make our systems faster, more efficient, and more reliable. She'd found her niche, the place where her particular talents could make the biggest impact. On the 5th anniversary of her hiring, I called her into my office one more time. Congratulations, I said, handing her an envelope. 5 years of excellent service. She opened the envelope to find a bonus check for $50,000, more money than she'd made in her entire first year as a janitor. Sarah, this is too much. It's exactly what you've earned. Your optimization protocols have saved the company millions of dollars in processing costs. This bonus represents a fraction of the value you've created. Emma stared at the check, shaking her head in amazement. 5 years ago, I was cleaning toilets and emptying trash cans. Now I'm leading a department at one of the most successful tech companies in the country. It doesn't seem real. It's real because you made it real. Through your own work, your own growth, your own choices. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly, giving me a second chance instead of just destroying me. I considered the question. There had been moments, especially in those first few months, when I'd wondered if I was being naive. If Emma was just playing a long game, waiting for the right moment to revert to her old habits. But those doubts had faded as I watched her genuine transformation. No, I said finally. I don't regret it. Destroying you would have been easy, but it wouldn't have accomplished anything meaningful. Helping you rebuild yourself, that created something valuable. Not just for you, but for our company, for our family, for everyone whose life you've touched since then. Speaking of family, Emma said with a smile, Mom called yesterday. She wanted to know if you're coming to Sunday dinner this week. Our family dinners had become a monthly tradition over the past few years. They weren't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, still topics we avoided, but they were genuine in a way our childhood gatherings had never been. I'll be there, I said, but only if you promise not to talk shop the entire time. Mom's eyes glaze over when we start discussing quantum entanglement protocols. Emma laughed. Deal. Though I make no promises about Dad. He's been reading quantum physics books trying to understand what we do. As Emma left my office, I turned to look out the window at the city skyline. Henderson Tech occupied 4 buildings now, with plans for a 5th. Our stock price had increased by 2,000% since I'd acquired the company. We were developing technology that would reshape entire industries, but my greatest accomplishment wasn't any of that. My greatest accomplishment was the woman who'd just walked out of my office, the sister I'd helped rebuild from the ground up, who'd learned to find satisfaction in honest work and genuine achievement. 7 years ago, Emma had stolen my future. Today, she was building her own, and that, I realized, was the most satisfying revenge of all.